Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Wednesday, October 30th edition of Talkback. And Talkback this morning is brought to you by 123 Seamless Gutters, the family-owned and operated business with top-notch customer service. They take care of your gutters so you don't have to. 406-240-2669, protecting the foundation of your future. Y West Storage is out of the Y on Two Smokes Way. If you need storage, the number 406-510-0590, because at Y West they're making room for you. Phillips Janitorial does both residential and commercial cleaning, so no job is too big or small for them. Call Phillips, 406-260-6617, and also brought to you by Harrington Surgical Supply. You can feel confident in their discreet and knowledgeable guidance on a multitude of products and medical supplies. Hey, welcome, everybody. Good to have you along this morning. I'm Peter Christian. That is Mr. Nick Christensen over there. Good morning, Mr. Nick.
Good morning.
And we are privileged to have with us the Honorable Greg Gianforte, the governor of the state of Montana. Greg, good morning, sir. You were in Missoula yesterday.
Yeah, Peter, Nick, good to be with you. We went down to Oxbow Cattle Company, Bart and Wendy. It's their operation. They raise cattle right there in the Bitterroot, and they want to... I picked up a couple of ribeyes and some ground meat. They have a shop right there. If you want Montana meat, I would encourage you to go visit them. Oxbow Cattle Company. We were there really just to celebrate innovation in agriculture. They're a younger couple. They've done a great job raising Montana beef and putting it on your plate.
Well, now tell me a little bit about how you found out about Oxbow.
Well, our Department of Ag is working with young producers across the state, and whenever we find innovation, we like to go visit and shine a bright light on it. And what Bart and Wendy Morris have done is they've gone direct ranch to table. They have a retail store just south of Missoula, and it's open to the public. You go in. It's on the honor system. You go through the freezer. You might pick out a tenderloin or a ribeye or maybe some ribs. It has a price on it. You just leave a check or you Venmo them the money, and they're selling about 300 cows a year in parts through that shop. They also have relationships with some other producers, so they have farm fresh eggs, they have lamb, they have pork, all available there. And I'm telling you, Peter, I was salivating.
Well, I'm sure they packaged it perfectly, so by the time you got it home, it's going to be ready to go, right?
Well, I'm looking forward to I picked up a couple of ribeyes, and I'm looking forward to tying into those.
You bet. Well, I'll tell you what, we already have a caller on the line, and we're about 2 minutes away from a break, so let's get that caller in. Jeff, good morning. You are on with Greg Gianforte. Go ahead, please.
Hey, good morning, Governor. Good morning, Montana. Good to talk to you again. Quick question for you. Your opponent, Ryan Bussey, was on here a couple of days ago, and he keeps saying that you raised property tax rates in Montana. Now, I just went through both property I had in Missoula at one time and now the property I own up here in Lake County, and I'm sorry, but I can't find anything on there that says the state other than education, which is a pass-through. So can you please explain to me how you raise taxes, property taxes on Montanans when the mill levy is set by cities and counties?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Unfortunately, some people are completely unshackled to the truth. The reality is property taxes pay for local expenses. They pay for K through 12 education, sheriff, and local municipalities, law enforcement. There is a portion that comes to the state. 100% of it, you're correct, gets distributed back to the schools. The state doesn't keep any of the property taxes you pay. But I would have, one thing I do agree with my opponent on, property taxes are too high. He's actually put forward a proposal that would he says, well, let's just lower the rate for all residential property. The problem is that would give a break to out-of-staters who have second homes here. But even worse, if you push the balloon in one place, it pops out in another. If you just lower the rate for all residential properties, it would increase the rate for small businesses and farms and ranches by about 20%. And that's just a bad idea. This is why we put a task force together. We have a better solution called a homestead exemption, which would allow Montana residents to pay a lower rate if it's their primary home. It would also benefit renters. It would extend to small business property, and it would not affect farm and ranches. So that's a much better approach. But ultimately, if we want to rein in property taxes, we've got to look at local spending. Over the last 20 years, inflation has averaged a little over 2% a year. Local spending has grown by 6% a year. Local spending is driving property taxes.
And with that, we're up against our first break. By the way, the phone lines are open. The governor's going to be with us till 8:30 this morning, and we appreciate him carving out a slice, if you will, for taking a note from Oxbow Cattle Company of his very valuable time. So the phone lines are open at 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309. We're going to come right back with more with Governor Gianforte in a moment. We are back. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. Peter Christian here, Nick Christensen producing Talkback this morning. And once again, we're honored to have Governor Greg Gianforte joining us on the phone. And the phone lines are almost all full already. So let's go jump right in and get Angela first. Angela, good morning. You're on with Governor Greg Gianforte. Go ahead. What's your question, ma'am?
Good morning, Pete, Nick. Good morning, Governor. This is Angela Prevey with the Bitterroot Building Association. Thank you for coming to our valley. My question for you today is that, as we know, one of the solutions to the housing crisis is supply. And in the valley, our biggest battle is, or one of our biggest battles is water. And we're fighting that battle on two fronts. One front is exempt wells, and we've been sitting at the table with DNRC on that one. The other battle is the lack of municipal water or water in our local towns. Many of our towns in the Bitterroot Valley, in fact, I think all of them from Lolo to Darby, with the exception of one or two, have reached capacity and are running into funding issues to expand those systems. Have you looked at ways the state might be able to help these small communities expand their water and sewer systems to allow for growth within their towns?
Very good question.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Angela. I would agree. We got thrown a curveball by the court here related to exempt wells over the summer. It was called the Broadwater decision that said the process that the state's been using to issue well permits for decades was not acceptable to the court anymore. They threw it out. So DNRC scrambled. We published new rules. We had to collect public comment for 60 days. The day the rules became active, we issued 77 subdivision permits, completely clearing the backlog. There's still more work to be done, and there's going to be legislation in front of this next session to look at a skinny down exempt well that is acceptable to the ag to don't deplete the aquifer and provides what we need for homeowners. So I would stay tuned on that. I would also note we've relied heavily on exempt wells in the past. In the last legislative session, we changed the way we do permitted wells, not exempt wells, but permitted wells, and we cut the timeline from over a year to 100 days. So one option for home builders is to look at an actual permitted well. Now, it depends if you're in a closed basin or not. There's some technicalities. But historically, no one's used permitted wells because it just took too long. Well, we've streamlined it, so that should help. In terms of infrastructure for water and sewer, I asked the legislature for $200 million out of our surplus for low-interest loans for communities to do water and sewer infrastructure for new subdivisions. Ultimately, the legislature gave me a little over $100 million. That's called the HOMES Act, HOMES. That money's available now for helping municipalities in addition to the existing programs that exist to help with sewer treatment and water supply. So there's a number of things we're doing in this area, but you're absolutely right. Our housing cost issues, affordability, are because of a lack of supply. That's why we've quadrupled the number of apprenticeships in the building trades. And 40% of the cost of a new home is government regulations. That's why we've been changing zoning laws, getting rid of exclusionary, permitting master planning. There's been a couple of dozen reforms we've done in this area, really leading the country. I'm not saying it's all fixed, but we've seen prices start to come down on rental properties in Missoula and in Bozeman. 6,100 units under construction in Bozeman right now alone. That's going to help when that hits the market.
All right, let's get Dave on the line, get another question from one of our callers. Dave, good morning. You're on with Governor Gianforte. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good morning. I've heard that the state has cut funding for preschool programs, and that some of the programs still being run are being run by New York firms. Now, do you have any comment about that?
That's not true. Our administration provided record funding for K through 12 education. We increased the funding last year over $85 million. We have gone to performance-based contracts in certain areas because it was kind of like the good old boy network for a long time where the same people were doing the same work. At the end, we've moved to performance-based contracts for some of our child care and preschool programs because we think we can get a better output for Montanans, and ultimately it'll result in more child care and preschool in the state. So I'm encouraged by the progress we're making.
Now, I know we have about 2 minutes before a break, so quickly, I know you wanted to talk about what you're going to be doing in Great Falls here pretty quick about the basically the all-of-the-above approach to energy. What's the focus on that?
Yeah, so I was just in Great Falls this week to celebrate Montana Renewables. This is a very exciting development as part of Calumet. That's the refinery up there. And what they're doing, they're taking feedstocks like lard from cattle and canola crops. They're crushing that and making jet fuel out of it. This is completely green energy, and they just received a $1.4 billion with a B dollar loan from the Department of Energy to increase their output by 10x right there in Great Falls. This is not only is it going to provide another outlet for our farmers and ranchers to get rid of some of the stuff that couldn't be used otherwise. Historically, it's gone into a dump. It also opens up new crop avenues. And it produces energy that the airlines are purchasing, and it's going to create jobs there in the Great Falls area. So I was there with Bruce Fleming, the CEO of Montana Renewables, this week to celebrate that expansion in our economy. And we're all of the above energy administration. We like hydro, coal, natural gas, solar, wind, nuclear, and in this particular case, organic jet fuel being produced in Great Falls, Montana.
And with that, we're going to take a little break. We have Kevin and Skip both waiting to visit with you, and we appreciate Governor Greg Gianforte sharing half an hour of his time. We appreciate it very much. We're going to come right back with more right after this. We are back on Talkback. We're thrilled to have Governor Greg Gianforte on the phone. And before we get to another call, there was something I know you wanted to address about connecting the east and west power grids right here in Montana. What's going on?
Yeah, well, I was just out in Colstrip to celebrate a $700 million investment to build power transmission lines from Colstrip going east into North Dakota. It's the first time the east and west power grids have been connected. The reason this is important is Montana is an energy exporter. We've produced a lot of energy in Colstrip. We're looking to expand that capacity. We just cut the ribbon on a $1 billion investment north of Miles City. That's using the transmission going west, but the east, our friends to the east need power too. So this Grid United project is going to build power lines from Colstrip to connect to the eastern grid, and it's going to set Colstrip up to be a energy production hub for the Northern Rockies. Of course, now we're running units 3 and 4 for coal power. That's operated, kept the lights on, reliable for a long time. But it opens up in the future for maybe small modular nuclear reactors there in Colstrip. As we bring more wind and solar power online, these transmission lines will be used for that. It's going to allow Montana to continue to be a net exporter, in fact, opening up major markets to the east for power produced here in Montana.
Let's get as many calls in as we can in the next 5 minutes. Kevin is up next. Kevin, good morning. You're on with Governor Gianforte. What's your question?
Yes, Governor, as you are aware, we have a homeless crisis here in Montana. They're camping out in city parks. and other places where they are not supposed to be. What has your administration done for rehabilitating such as institutions? And I know there was a lot of money that was taken away for some of these health cares. I'll listen to the response on the radio.
Okay, thanks for the call.
Yeah, so, the public camping is really a local ordinance issue. I was pleased to see Missoula and now Bozeman as well has said they're not going to allow urban camping. What is really try to attack both the addiction issues and behavioral health. We made a record investment in behavioral health, $300 million out of our surplus last session to bring back community-based mental health. We've also been putting behavioral health services into our county detention centers. I visited Missoula. We dramatically increased the care that we provide there for the inmates because the sheriffs tell me, 80 to 90% of the inmates at the county detention center have behavioral health issues that may prevent them from holding a job and ultimately put them back on the street. So we're going to continue to attack that.
All right, let's get Skip on the line. And Skip, good morning. You're on with Governor Gianforte. Go ahead.
Thank you, Peter. And I'll make this real quick. Yesterday, sir, at a meeting I saw you at was wonderful. You gave me a wonderful answer that I thought everybody should hear to the upcoming sunset on Medicaid expansion and your views on it. I'd appreciate it if you give us both sides of the coin of that again so everybody could hear. Thank you very much.
Skip, sure. Thanks for the call.
Hey, Skip, it was good to see you. We were at the GOP headquarters there in Missoula. We had a big rally. Excuse me. And it was great to see the party faithful out and getting ready for the election. A lot of people depend on the Medicaid expansion. I've been really clear. I think we should renew it, but I think we need to put sideboards on it. We need to make sure that people, able-bodied adults without dependents, are working to get that benefit because we want all of our social safety nets, whether it's food stamps or other Medicaid expansion, we want them to be a trampoline that helps people get back on their feet, not a hammock you climb into and you stay there for the rest of your life. So I'm looking forward to getting it done in this upcoming session. I just need the help of the legislature. We got to put appropriate sideboards on it so it's there for the people that need it. It has a renewing effect on able-bodied adults so we can get them back into the workforce.
We got about 2 minutes before we have to let you go. So I know there's some things you wanted to. We have more callers waiting, but I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the youth hunting story contest you've got going on. What's the story on that?
Well, hunting is not something we do in Montana. It's truly who we are. It's part of our identity. And we need to encourage the next generation to get involved. So if you have a son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter, age 10 to 17, I encourage you to take them hunting. Doesn't matter what they harvest. Could be a duck or a gopher or deer. And then submit a picture and have them write a little essay, less than 500 words, to youthhunting.mt.gov, youthhunting.mt.gov. We have prizes from Sitka, Kenetrek Boots, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, J2 Taxidermy, Murdoch's. We're going to have them all to the winners. There's 10 winners. There's no cost to apply. We'll have them all to the Capitol. We're going to have a wild game feed, and we'll trick them out with gear. It's a great program. This is the third year doing it. We had 400 applicants last year. I would encourage you to get out in the field and encourage your young people to submit their applications to the Governor's Youth Hunting Story Contest.
All right, we got less than a minute left, so tell us what's your itinerary? Where are you headed next?
I'm headed to Billings. We're going to honor some people in Columbus. Then I'll be at Yellowstone Boys and Girls Ranch today, reviewing the great work they do, and then a Chamber Awards dinner in Billings tonight. So it's a busy day. I would say we have to have veterans commendations. This is the last week to get them in. They got to be in by October 31st. If you know a veteran who served their country well and served in their community, we'd love to hear about it at recognizeveterans.mt.gov.
Sounds good. Governor Gianforte, I want to be faithful to your time. Thank you so much for sharing the half an hour with us. We appreciate it, sir.
My pleasure, Nick and Peter.
Thank you, sir. Take care. All right, and we are going to take a quick break, and we have other folks waiting on the line. Go ahead, Nick. Please.
Yeah, I was going to say we have Bob and a special guest from 8:30 to 9. We'll be right back with that.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back after this quick timeout. All right, we are back on TalkBack. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. Again, thank you to Governor Gianforte for spending his time with us this morning. We're shifting gears right now. Another special guest on the phone, who, of course, is no stranger to TalkBack. Bob Seidenschwarz is joining us right now. And, Bob, you've got a special guest you'd like to share a story, so please go ahead.
I do, and for Missoula that's listening, this is a rare and privileged opportunity. We've got Shoshana Rice on the radio. She's calling from Coeur d'Alene right now, but our guest is Yair Moses. He is an Israeli who's grew up, I believe, on one of the kibbutzes that on October 7th, the attack that took place and the subsequent massacre. His father is still being held by Hamas. His mother was held for 90 days. He was not. So I'm going to let Shoshana introduce the organization that has brought him here and the privilege that we have to be able to hear this story. So, Shoshana, please, if you would.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Shoshana, and I'm the director of a nonprofit called Faces of October 7th. And it's a small startup nonprofit that basically brings October 7th survivors and speakers around the world to share their testimony. Our mission is to fight the misinformation that's out there about what happened that day and the experience of Israelis, and also to help inspire resilience against all of this anti-Semitism and misunderstanding that's happening around the world through these, face-to-face connections, bringing someone who really can share their first-person personal stories. And so right now I'm here with Yair Moses. We've brought him to speak around Idaho and Montana for the past, and he's been sharing the story of what happened to the community that he grew up in, which is Kibbutz Nir Oz. And he tells the story of his family members and his parents specifically, and of course, dad, who is still being held hostage in Gaza. So the main thing is really understanding that there's still survivors like his dad there that need to come home. I'd love to hand the floor over to him to make sure that you guys have some space to talk and for him to share a story. Thank you so much for having us.
You bet. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you,
Shoshana, thank you for doing so.
Yair,
are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I know you actually, just for the listening audience, you were here in Missoula this past Sunday at Har Shalom speaking to a group of people that attended that. So I thought of how do I think or approach a situation that I'm very familiar with in terms of what had happened and the subsequent issues that followed. But I think the best thing that I could do and all of us could do is let you just tell your story as you need to. So please, by all means, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I was born and raised in Kibbutz Nir Oz, near the Gaza border. A kibbutz is a very special way of living. It's a small community. Nir Oz has around 400 people, and it's a very, very sharing community. We share our resources. The fields are the kibbutz fields. Not everyone has their own fields. My father has been a farmer in the kibbutz fields since he arrived in the early 60s. And even now, after he's retired, he's 80 years old. He still go there sometimes to help them, to share his knowledge and everything. And it was a magnificent life. We lived near the Gaza border, but most of the time we had no problem, no issues with the security. When I was a child, there was even not a fence most of the time. But slowly, as the situation with the Palestinians escalated, they built a bigger fence and higher fence, and the army started to check it again and again and again more frequently to make sure no one is going through this fence. On October 7th, as I said, I don't live in the kibbutz anymore, so I live in a different city called Gedera. I woke up to the sound of sirens with all my family, like many people in Israel. We went to the safe room, which is a room inside the house, which is like a shelter. And then we tried to contact my family to make sure they are okay. My parents are divorced. They live in different houses. We talked with both of them, and they said, don't worry, we are okay. We are in this safe room in our house, and don't worry. But slowly we heard that we saw that the bombing are not stopping. Unfortunately for us in Israel, it's something we know for the last 20 years. From the time to time, we have some missiles and bombs shot from Gaza into Israel on civilian places. But it's like we know the procedure. We go to the safe room, wait 10 minutes, and then you can continue with your life. But this time, it's happening again and again and again. And slowly we started to hear rumors that there are terrorists in Israel and also in Oz. And at around 9:30, we lost connection with both of my parents. And so after some...
No,
go ahead, please.
If you don't mind, gentlemen, we're just didn't have a chance to tell Yair and Shoshana we have to take a commercial break about every 10 minutes or so. So let's go ahead. We'll take a quick break right here, and then when we come back, we'll continue with a very dramatic story of what we're hearing that actually occurred on October 7th to Yair and his family. So we're going to come right back with more right after this. We are back on Talkback, and we're continuing a very dramatic story. We're just getting started with it here with Bob Seidenschwarz, and of course, Shoshana is with us, along with Yair Moses. And Yair, I know you were just getting it to the part where the tragedy occurred there in the kibbutz. So please go ahead.
Okay, like I said, at 9:30, we lost connection with both of my parents, and we didn't know what happened with them. My sister was also in a third house in Rose, and with her we still had some connection. And after a while, we got a message that my father was taken by the terrorist. We learned later that when the terrorist got inside their house, he left the safe room and told the terrorist he's the only one in the house. And he thought that they're coming to rob him, so he gave them some money and the car keys and everything. But unfortunately, after some time in the house, they took him with him and left. Together with him in the house was his life partner, Efrat Katz, and a daughter, Doron, and two granddaughters, which are only 2 and 4. And he left the safe room in order to save them. And in that case, it worked. But unfortunately, a different group came later and found them hiding and took them too. Efrat was found dead in the fields of the kibbutz after a few days. And Doron and the 2 daughters were taken into Gaza wounded, were held there for 49 days in hospital and in private people houses, and they were released on the first agreement we had back in November 24. When the terrorists arrived at my mother's house, she couldn't hold the door for the safe room. She tried to, but you cannot lock it. It's built in purpose that it won't be able to be locked. And the terrorists opened the door. Then she realized they're going to take her because already there's some rumors and people say that people were taken. So she told them, I will come with you, no need for violence. They took her with some guns pointing at her, put her immediately on like a golf cart and drove her into Gaza. Inside Gaza, many people cheering in the street that they saw they have a hostage, trying to beat her even. And then they took her into a house. Inside the house, there was an entrance to a tunnel. They put her immediately into the tunnel. And she spent all the time in captivity on the same tunnel, same place. 49 days with no sunlight, no fresh air, very poor sanitary condition, very little food, very little medicines. Very high humidity, but she managed to survive. And also, she was released after 49 days on the same day like Doron and her daughters. But they weren't together. They just met on the release day. And this is and from then on Saturday evening, we heard the stories later, but on Saturday evening, after IDF arrived in Rose and scanned it to make sure they're not terrorists and started to release all the people and put them together in one same place because the kibbutz was damaged very, very badly, then we know that we didn't find my mother, and then we know that she was kidnapped probably because no one found her, and fortunately also they didn't find her body at that time because it was like a happy news that you know that your mother was kidnapped and not murdered. This is the unfortunate situation we were in October 7th.
These are
yes.
This is, of course, your immediate family, but growing up on the kibbutz, there must have been many other people, friends, other associates that you knew intimately that were taken as well. Is that correct?
It's correct. Kibbutz Nir, like I said, it's a small community. Around 400 people lived in it on October 6th. There were some guests also because it was a holiday in Israel. And 170 people, more than a quarter of the population, were either murdered or kidnapped on October 7th. It's very hard for the community to understand because a community like a kibbutz, like I said, it's a one big family. It's not just people that living in the same place and you have some friends, but the others you just say hello when you see them. It's really one big family. Two of my best friends that I grew up with from age which were just born, kindergarten, school, everything. They're really like brothers to me. Two of them were murdered on that Saturday. Parents of friends of mine, neighbors, people I work with. So all the communities, people you know. I know from these 117 people, I know more than 90 people of them I know personally. It's not just people know. Some guests, some family that came later, but most of them I know them personally. And it was very, very hard to understand the magnitude of this huge thing. Also, the kibbutz itself was damaged very, very badly. 40% of the houses in the kibbutz were burned to the ground. Another 20% were damaged so bad so they cannot be fixed. Out of around 225, 26 houses, only 6 houses, the terrorists didn't get inside them. All the others, the terrorists came inside, and if they could, they murdered or kidnapped people. If not, they just broke everything, stole whatever they could steal, and did so much damage. So the kibbutz itself, it will take few years more until people will be able to go back and live there.
Peter, do you have any questions for Yair?
I'm just standing here amazed by your courage and the courage of the people of Israel to try to understand why someone would do this, and not only that, but why the captivity has gone on for so long. And what is the hope for the remaining hostages who are there?
Well, for my father, we had only one sign of life since he was kidnapped on December. It was a video that's released by the terrorist when we saw him speaking, and even then he looked, I think, 10 years older than when he looked on October 6th. Very tired, very exhausted, very thin, and this is the only sign of life we have. We have no information about him and the condition he's being held. We don't know if he's in underground or in houses, if he gets food, medicines. Actually, we don't even know for sure if he's alive or not, but we must believe he is. And this is the same for all the others. There are still in 101 people from Israel that are still there. Some of them, unfortunately, we know that already murdered. We know the terrorists also kidnapped bodies that were murdered inside Israel and kidnapped. Others we know that were kidnapped alive and were murdered back in Gaza. And for some people, the IDF has some information they managed to get, for others not. So it's very, very different between the people themselves. And we're trying to hold on the belief that whoever's still alive will be alive, and we're striving to have some agreement that they will be back soon, as soon as possible. Right. This is all we try to do. For me, my life stopped. I didn't work since October 7th. All I do is activity like this, traveling around the world and inside Israel, go to media, go to talk to people, and do whatever I can, go to talk to politicians, do whatever I can in order to bring them back.
What can the rest of the world do? I mean, obviously, people who are listening here in Missoula would love to reach out and help in some way. What can we do here in America to help alleviate the pain and suffering that you're going through? I know we can't bring the hostages back, but what can we do to help you?
Well, there are a few things that can be done. First, talk about it. Hear the story. You can look more for the stories online. There are many options to find the story of the hostages, and share it with your friends, your family, your co-workers, just to people to know this is not something that happened a year ago, one event. It's a life of many people in Israel since then. One more thing else you can do is talk to your elected officials. Ask them, do you remember that still Israelis in captivity? What are you doing in order to support their release? And things like this. It's very helpful. I know it gets there because we heard from people that talked with the people in the government that they do hear from people from states, from countries inside the United States that they hear it. So it's very important that the voice will be sound and people know. Okay, people also share in the social media, the stories, whatever they heard, the people will understand this was a brutal attack on Israel that still happens. Even today, there are around more than 150,000 Israelis that cannot go back to live in their houses, also from the north, from Lebanon, and even in the south of Israel, near Gaza, because they're still being attacked all the time. And one more thing, if someone can, to donate to the organization like Faces of October 7th that do this amazing work and bring us here. It will be very helpful to continue this important mission to do this.
And with that, we're going to take a quick commercial break, Bob. When we come back, we'll let you wrap up with our guests. And this is very moving and very powerful, and we deeply appreciate you folks being on with us. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back, everybody. We're back on Talkback, and we're having a very dramatic conversation here with Bob Seidenschwarz. Shoshana's joining us, along with Yair Moses, and we're talking about what occurred on October 7th, the faces of October 7th. And so, Bob, if you'll continue, please.
Yes, Yair, the trauma is something that we can only imagine. I think the closest thing that in our recent times that we've experienced was 9/11, in terms of the people that were there in New York City and in Washington, D.C. and Pennsylvania. So those who live it have a perspective that we can't even truly imagine. We hear these stories. So how do we really understand this in the context of the bigger picture and the issues in that region and what you've gone through? And you had mentioned that there was still some thoughts that you wish to share with us. So help us get some perspective a little bit more on this.
Okay, sure. First, for the magnitude of the thing that happened to Israeli, that on that same Saturday, 1,200 people were murdered, many thousand injured, 250 were kidnapped. And for magnitude size, people need to understand it's like 30 times November 11th from the number of people who got hurt. So this is the magnitude of this thing to Israel, to all the communities, all the people in Israel, and especially to small communities like the kibbutzim that live near the Gaza border, because these are very small communities, very united. Like I said, one big family, each one of these, and it's very, 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 very hard for us and for everyone in Israel to continue with their life until all the people will be back. And this is the main problem. People must understand that this is something that happened. Israel was attacked by Hamas in a time that was apparently like a ceasefire time. It was. Now they're shouting for ceasefire, but on October 6th there was a ceasefire, and then they attacked Israel. They kidnapped people from their home on Saturday morning, sometimes barefoot in their pajamas, and took them. And even war prisoners have some rights, but in this case, it's civilians, and they have no rights. No one knows what is the situation. Hamas is not allowing. No one of the of the organization, the world organization like Red Cross or others, to visit them, to see their condition, to know if they're alive, if they're wounded, if they're sick. We have no information about them. Some of them, like my father is 8 years old, and we know nothing about him. There are still 2 little kids, infants there, that we don't know anything about them. And this is something very, very hard to understand and to adjust. And what Israel is doing is just trying to bring our people back and prevent something like this from happening again.
So help us, it was mentioned earlier about dispelling some narratives or false information. I will tell you that I have many a conversation with people, and when this comes up, the response is, yes, Israel lost 1,200 people, and the numbers as a percent of your population, horrific. And the response we often get is, but look what's happening in Gaza, where there are tens of thousands of people that have gotten killed. I can't attest and speak to the numbers in terms of children or mothers and fathers. So this is where we here in America get into this, well, what about? Look what's happened here. And it doesn't give real color or depth to what I would love to be able to explain, but I'm not there in Israel. And none of us are, except for the few rare people. How do we talk about that? How do we see that in that kind of context?
We have about a minute and a half. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll start. You must understand whatever happened when Hamas started this attack on Israel, they knew that Israel will react. They knew that there will be many casualties between the Palestinians. And from their point, it served their target. They wanted it to happen. And this is what people need to understand. What happened there is because Hamas wanted it to happen. They put their missile launchers in hospitals, in kindergarten places, between private houses. This is what they did. And what Israel is trying to do is prevent it and stop it. If missiles are being shot on Israeli cities in a place, from a place between 2 high buildings, Israel must destroy this missile launcher, and as a result, the buildings are being destroyed. But when Israel does it, she tells the people that live in the building, please evacuate from this building. And Hamas is not allowing them to do this. So this is something Hamas wanted Palestinian civilians to get hurt. Israel trying to, as much as possible, not to hurt civilians, as much as possible, even though many civilians participated in what happened on October 7th. In Kibbutz Niroz, except the terrorist fighters, there also been women and children, not just soldiers, if you can tell them.
We will.
So it's something that people must.
We will be back after the top of the hour and continue this conversation as long as we can. Stay with us. Hey, welcome back. It is hour number 2 of Talkback with us Wednesday, October 30th. Talkback this morning brought to you by Harrington Surgical Supply, where appointments are preferred for mastectomy fittings, custom compressions, but walk-ins are welcome. 123 Seamless Gutters, a family-owned and operated business that helps you with your gutters so you don't have to do it yourself. Call 406-240-2669, protecting the foundation of your future. Also brought to you by Y West Storage out at the Y on 2 Smokes Way. If you need number 406-510-0590 at Y West, we're making room for you. And finally, by Phillips Janitorial, with residential and commercial cleaning, both your home and your business. No job too big or small for Phillips. 406-260-6617. I'm Peter Christensen taking your phone calls this morning, and we are talking about a very dramatic story that Bob Seidenschwarz is sharing with us, the Montana World Affairs Council, and we have Shoshana and Yair both with us on the phone. So, Bob, please take it away.
Yeah, Yair, we talked about a few things off air, so if you would like to continue with where we left off, please.
Yes, sure. The situation currently in Gaza, I know it's very, very hard, but people must understand, many people in Israel that before October 7 said we need to live with coexistence with our neighbors and we need to find a way to live with them, now have the fear that it might be impossible, it will take many, many years. Because while IDF was in Gaza, they found many books of education, things like this, and we see that all they are striving to is to destroy Israel. They have no meanings of peace. All the education there for the kids is a picture of how Palestinians killing Israeli soldiers and children. This is proof found that were found there. So currently, we don't know what will happen in the future. We really, really hope that in some day they will realize that the best for them is to try to live near the Israelis, because their means to destroy Israel will never happen. And we know this is what they want to do. But we all understand that this something will never happen. So they will have to understand that they want to live near Israel in peace, because as you all know, the amount of money, Israel is not in Gaza for more than 18 years. And so much money was spent there that this money, instead of use it for the welfare of the people there, will use only for building tunnels, attack tunnels against Israel, and buy weapons that is directed against Israel, and plan attacks on Israel. This is what this money was spent, not for the welfare of the citizens. Gaza could be a paradise for people that live there if they wanted to live peace with the Israelis. So, and people must understand that what Israel is doing now is they're trying to bring the people back. I don't know any other country in the world that will allow something like this to happen to her. If something like this will happen from Mexico to the United States, I don't believe the United States will wait until Mexicans that kidnap the people will wait for them to release them. And of course, the United States will march with all its power into Mexico and make sure it will never happen again, whoever did it, if the country itself or some organization that sits there. So it's really, really the same things. And even people that think about that the Palestinians are very, very poor and they need to really live their life, need to support the release of the hostages, because this is the only thing that can stop this war, the release of the hostages and bring everybody back to Israel. Before this happens, Israel cannot stop.
We have about 3 minutes, Bob, before we have to let you go. So go ahead, please.
So, yeah, you wanted to talk about your dad. So please, in the time we have left.
Yes. So few words. My father, like I said, is 80 years old. Been a farmer all his life. An amazing family man and man of people and land. We say he loved to work in the field. And for more than 30 years, he's been traveling around the world to developing countries, teaching them how to do better agriculture, because he believes this will improve their life. So this is the kind of man he is. He loves to travel and share his knowledge with people. Even people come to Israel to share his knowledge and teach them how to have better agriculture in order to improve their lives. So this is something that I would like to say, and I think maybe Shoshana can talk a bit about what happened here in the States now.
Sure, I can. If there's time, we were talking about I mentioned in the beginning the reason the nonprofit was founded. That there's this kind of misunderstanding that I've and my co-director has seen around the American public, that these calls that October 7th was an act of resistance against an oppressor. And I think one of the main reasons why we decided we needed to bring these people who have personal firsthand experiences is that people don't understand that this, as much as Palestinians are struggling, October 7th is not an act of resistance. And I think that if you learn a little bit about the story, you can see how much that's a gross misunderstanding. And as an American Jew, we were really disappointed with the reaction of a lot of our friends and non-Jewish friends and community calling the October 7th an act of resistance. And so that's why we started this organization, to make sure that people really have a much more realistic understanding of what happened that day and what the victims and Israel and Jews in general are going through right now with our people being held hostage still today.
Now, Shoshana, is there a website where people can go just to wrap things up? Is there a website or perhaps a toll-free phone number or a place where we can donate if we want to?
Yeah, definitely. Our website is facesofoct7, like the number 7.com. And there you can learn more about our mission and where we've gone and some of the people we've had to speak. And there's also buttons to donate. We could definitely use all the help we can get. It's been very difficult to fly people in and out of Israel and create these itineraries as a startup. We could definitely use all the help we could get. And it's Faces of October7.com. If you Google Faces of October 7th, you should be able to find it too. That's the name of our organization.
I want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Yair. Thank you, Shoshana, for sharing that dramatic story. We appreciate it very, very much. And bless you all. We're going to come right back, take a quick break. Patrick Barkey is going to join us. And I want to say thank you to all of the folks who have been sharing that information. We'll get together with Patrick Barkey when we return right after this. We are back. This is Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. And this may go down in Talkback history as one of the most varied programs that we've had for a long, long time. So right now we are privileged to have with us Dr. Patrick Barkey from the University of Montana Bureau of Business and Economic Research. I know that you're no longer the director, but we still have access to your wisdom and knowledge. And so I know there's a lot of things going on with the BBER, and we'd love you to share it with us. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Peter, Nick. Great to be with you. Yeah, we're knee deep in a lot of studies, and we're also getting ready for our winter program. And the theme for our winter program has to do with the artificial intelligence, AI, and what it means for Montana, and trying to look really specifically at the kinds of problems that AI is solving right now, particularly workforce problems that have a bit of a different spin. It won't be too much of that, the science fiction monster that a lot of people are talking about, but more in terms of, getting us from A to B in a little bit better shape. So I think it'll be an interesting program, and we're, of course, putting together all the pieces for that right now as well, Peter. So it's good to have this chance to connect with you.
And you have a new director. We had a chance to visit with him a little while ago. So tell us about are you the new director of the BBER and how you two are working together?
Yeah, Jeff Michael has been on board since October the 1st, and he's the new director. And I'm now a number 2 guy, and I'll be kind of transitioning into retirement eventually, but not for a while. And so I'm really the one that is really going to be devoted mostly to getting our research done. And not that Jeff isn't going to be involved in research, but he's going to have all the management responsibilities, a lot of the responsibilities for doing some talks. Jeff is we like Jeff very much. He's our first choice. We're tickled to death he came, and he is he's long on experience. He knows. He's a forecaster. He's done a lot of applied work, and he's lived in some interesting places. He spent some time in Maine, and he spent some time in California, in the Central Valley, and so he's pretty knowledgeable about natural resources, about housing, and of course everything about the economy. So I think he'll be a great addition to the team.
Now, I do know that you are still helping out with the Montana Montana Economic Minutes, and I've got the list of this week's topics here in front of us, and every time I see the word housing, I automatically begin thinking about the upcoming legislative session. So you've got, I know one of your episodes is called Revisiting the Housing Bubble Story. So for those who haven't had a chance to hear that yet, a little bit of the research and facts about that.
Right. I think there's a lot of history that is written as the events are happening, and not just in this case about the housing bubble, but about a lot of things that we go through, that when we get a few more years behind us and we're able to look at things a little less, passionately, we see the real story. So the simple story of the housing bubble is that, oh my God, we built too much housing and all of a sudden the price crashed. And, weren't we dumb and foolish Americans building all these houses? Well, really, everything that's happened since that time, and of course, this was the Great Recession in 08 and 09. So, 15 years ago now, 16 years. Everything that's happened since then is put the lie to that simple explanation. Because, in fact, housing price growth went right back on the up escalator. And that should tell us that we didn't have too much housing. What we had in the Great Recession was a financial panic that caused no one to be able to get a mortgage for housing. Nobody was lending money. All the credit standards tightened. And so there were no buyers, and that's why prices collapsed. Not because we had too many houses, because no one could take out a loan to buy it. So that explanation, by the way, is a little oversimplified as well. But the point is that we're very much in a housing deficit today. We were then as well, although not nearly as severe. And so the whole notion that just because housing prices are going up, they're going to collapse anytime soon because we built too much, I don't think that really holds water anymore.
Well, I'm very excited to see that more houses are being built. But is there a possibility of the demand is so high right now? Is there a possibility of meeting the demand?
Well, first off, the demand is the demand is high, but sales are very weak, and sales are very weak because with interest rates higher,
right,
and prices high, in terms of monthly payment and so forth, the price is very high of being a homeowner. Most people are thinking about renting instead, at least for a while. There's that whole timing issue. People are expecting rates to come down further, so you really want to buy a house today, that kind of issue. So that's what's going on in the market right now as we speak, heading in towards November of 2024. But the key point, though, is that when you look at Montana communities, particularly in western Montana where the growth has been stronger, and you look at the number of people moving to the areas with the best economic opportunities, they're underbuilt, and some of them substantially. And so it's a funny time to buy, and it's not a great time to sell right now. But that fundamental imbalance is not going to be corrected with a flick up or a flick down of interest rates. It's only going to be corrected by digging in and building enough housing to bring the market more closer to what you would consider to be a healthy, normal housing market.
And, of course, it's very difficult to snap your fingers and have a new house built. So, yeah. Anyway, we're going to come right back. We have Jeff waiting to visit with you, Dr. Barkey. And the phone lines are open, by the way. Dr. Barkey will be with us until 10 o'clock this morning. So if you have a question or a comment, please give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. We'll be right back after this quick timeout. Welcome back. This is Talk Back, and we are privileged to have with us Dr. Patrick Barkey, the now retired director of the University of Montana's Bureau of Business and Economic Research, here to answer questions about what's going on with our economy as well as other economic issues. And Jeff has been waiting through the break. So, Jeff, good morning. You're on with Dr. Barkey. Go ahead, please.
Hey, good morning, Dr. Barkey. Always a privilege, and I apologize for any road noise. One of the big questions has always been in terms of taxes is income tax versus consumption tax. And in a random act of insight, it struck me that are really a consumption tax because they're based on whether or not goods come in and we purchase them. And for years, the United States ran off of tariffs before the institution of the income tax back in the early 20th century. So my question is, it's become kind of an issue, tariffs on the campaign trail, but what's your opinion of the feasibility if we could actually replace income tax with tariffs? Is that feasible? Is that undoable? Because I think doing both would be a disaster because then you would grow both. But so I'm looking for whether or not tariffs can fill in for income taxes. Thanks.
Thanks for the call, Jeff.
Okay, so you can go a lot of ways with that question. The first thing I would say is probably not what you want to hear or your listeners want to hear. But, when you're running a $2 trillion a year deficit and when your debt is more than 100% of the economic output of your entire country, the reality is you do need more taxes. And So it's a simple story to talk about replacing one with the other, and it sounds kind of neutral. But in terms of what you need to fill the gigantic hole of debt, debt is eradicated by bringing in more money than you spend. So that's not where your question was going. Your question was about tariffs. Our tariffs are consumption tax. That would be the first thing. Well, they show up in consumption, but they're not a consumption tax per se because they don't tax consumption. They tax the import of certain goods. So they tax the imported car. They don't tax the domestic car. So it's true that they have effects on the price of consuming some kinds of goods. They're also a fairly belligerent, if you will, economic policy in the sense that they're directed at other countries, and those other countries tend to reciprocate. So then there's other kinds of knock-on effects, if you will, of a tariff. So that's all the setup. Your main question was, could they replace some of the revenue that income tax comes in? Well, first off, I would note that when the U.S. A long time ago funded its operations, which were infinitesimally small compared to what the level of operations are today, when they financed those operations primarily with tariffs, that was when we were a small agrarian economy, which didn't even compete in many industries. And in a sense, if you want to go back to that time of fairly low growth, fairly low integration with the global economy, then tariffs are the ticket, okay? I don't think many of us want to go back to that. Some of our rhetoric suggests us we want, but we like going to the store and having money in our pockets and having a lot of different kinds of goods that we can buy. So we're in a different world, and I don't think there's any real comparison between the capacity of a tariff to generate revenue and the capacity of an income tax to generate revenue. I suppose arithmetically you could come up with some sort of replacement. You could replace a smidgen of income tax revenue with tariffs, but it's kind of apples and oranges in terms of the capacity of those two instruments to provide revenue to governments.
Okay, let's get Dave on the line. And Dave, good morning. You're on Talkback with Dr. Patrick Barkey. Go ahead.
Yes, first of all, I've heard from the experts that Kamala Harris's plan would cause $4 trillion in more deficits, and Trump's plan would do $6 trillion in deficits. And I'm not sure which is, if that's all true. But as far as tariffs go, there's a lot of complaints about food costs. Well, in the wintertime, we get a lot of food shipped in from Mexico, and if there was a tariff on Mexican products coming in, I would assume that it would affect the price of food coming into this country negatively. And what's your view on that?
Thanks, Dave.
Well, it tilts the table, right? I mean, it makes domestic sources of food cheaper and imported food more expensive. And since Mexico has a slightly better climate, at least outdoors, I mean, we can grow food indoors in the winter, but outdoors, I mean, the vegetables and all that sort of things that come from Mexico, there wouldn't be no close substitutes probably, I mean, at least in the short run, domestically. So that kind of, answers that question. I mean, it's a revenue collection device in part, and revenue collection means it comes from somewhere, and that's typically from the pockets of taxpayers. So whether you pay in the form of a consumption tax, you pay an income tax, there's going to be no magic tax where none of us have to pay and the revenue just shows up. So I don't think that's an argument against tariffs per se. The question is it a good way to raise revenue for the government? I already pointed out to Jeff that it's not adequate. Is the first blow, and the second blow is that it tends to invite retaliation, and it brings us closer to a world that we thought we had exited from many decades ago, and a world where we were more self-sufficient and we didn't trade as much. Let me make a comment about these estimates of the so-called Harris plan and the so-called Trump plan. I don't know if standing up on on a podium and talking is a plan, right? There is, when it comes to taxes, Congress is the one that is explicitly laid out in the Constitution. Congress is the one that raises revenue. I mean, any kind of revenue. Now, the only reason why the presidents have such power to do things with tariffs directly is because Congress has given them that power. Congress can also take it away. I'm not sure they would, but let's be really clear that when people are scoring these various things said on pulpits about the economy, which I think is a valuable thing to do, the reality is that whether it's a plan of one candidate or another, it takes a lot more than just talking in a stump speech to turn anything like those plans into reality. So I don't know whose plan has a bigger impact on the deficit. It's extremely depressing to think that neither candidate seems to be owning up to the fiscal situation that we're in today, and that's how it is. If people don't want to talk about it, people aren't worried about it enough to bring these candidates to task on that very clear reality that most of us know, then we're going to get just what we deserve.
So basically, we're chatting merrily in the car as we're approaching the cliff.
I think we are. I'm not exactly sure how far the cliff is and how far we're going to fall and all that sort of thing. But I mean, the low tire pressure indicator is on, and I think you better pull the car over.
And what's that oil pressure light? Anyway,
Yeah, exactly.
We're up against the break, Jeff. With another call coming up in just a moment. Our phone lines are open, by the way. If you'd like to visit with Dr. Patrick Barkey about all things economic, give us a call 721-1290 1-800-568-5309. I'm coming back right after this. We are back on Talkback, and I'm Peter Christian. Nick Christensen taking your phone calls over there this morning, producing Talkback as he always does. Dr. Patrick Barkey joining us on the phone right now, retired director of the University of Montana's Bureau of Business and Economic Research, and Jeff is back. So, Jeff, good morning.
It's a different Jeff.
Oh, a different Jeff. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Jeff, go ahead. What's on your mind, please?
Thank you, Dr. Barkey. This is a different Jeff. I was sleeping at night, and all of a sudden I had kind of a light bulb moment. I was always taught that something's only worth as much as you can sell it for. And concerning the tax increases because of the values have been going up so quickly on houses, and people are sitting on their houses, they haven't sold it. How come they can't consider that increase in value? What do you call it? What the Democrats are trying to do, what they call unrealized income, and use that to stop being taxed for something that hasn't been sold yet. Unrealized income. If somebody hasn't sold it, how can it be worth more? And why should they have to pay taxes on an appraised value that hasn't sold? And if there's any way to call it that. Income unsold. You know what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Sure. Well, it's a good question, and some variant of that might be one of the fixes for property tax. Although it would be a little bit different in the case of an income tax. An income tax income is like a stream, right? I mean, it's dollars per year. How much did you make last year? Here's your tax bill. That kind of thing. Whereas a housing is an asset, it's a lump of money, right. It's sitting out there. Right. And the main thing, the main issue, it's not an issue, but just the reason why it's not considered that is that the property tax is explicitly levied on property, okay? It's not an income tax. It says this is going to be the basis of our tax. How much property you have, what's it worth, et cetera. And here's your tax bill.
Right.
So they're two different things, but the spirit of what you're talking about, I believe, and tell me if I've got this right, is that no one, you tell me that my house has doubled in price, and yet there's nothing that's changed for me. I'm just sitting in the same house.
Right.
I still got to fix the roof. I have the same amount of money to pay my bills, et cetera.
Right.
And now I get this whopper of a tax bill on that basis. But I've got nothing to show for that other than this piece of paper with a different number on it. So one possibility would be to say, okay, your tax bill is based on property, but you haven't really realized the gain in the value of your property in some sense, like we were just talking about. So when you sell your house, we'll give you that whopper of a bill. All right. And there's some, that's a little bit about a little how it works in California. It sets up some pretty perverse incentives, though, is the problem with that, because no one's going to want to sell their house. They're just going to want to die in it, right? Because if your property has gone up and you sell your house, and now here's your tax bill, okay? It's this value that's gone up, but it's something that's worth looking into, I think, because it does solve one of the biggest problems with the property tax is that it's unrelated to your ability to pay. So at least when you had a windfall year, if you made a killing on the market or whatever, you got a big lump of income, and now you get this whopper of a tax bill for your income tax. At least you got something, at least in principle. Maybe you frittered it away, but you had that extra income to pay it. Whereas property tax, you don't have that. So it's worth looking into because I think property as the basis for income, property as the basis for tax has been around a very, very long time, and there's a reason for that. And the reason is because it's hard to escape the tax. It gives the tax collector some certainty, and it also is correlated with wealth. I mean, housing is part of your wealth. It's not part of your income, but it's part of your wealth. And there's an elemental fairness kind of thing that people that have more wealth should pay more tax. I mean, most people would agree with that in principle. But when it comes to their own house, they're not too crazy about it because they don't feel much wealthier just because somebody tells them their house has a different value.
So like a company with a bunch of property and their property goes up in value, as far as the company is concerned, they are taxed on the value of their property have gone up as a company compared to an individual?
I don't think it's an individual versus company question because there's property tax levied on both of them. I think as the question is, when you're sitting in a house and the property taxes, prices have changed in such a way that now your tax bill is 40%, 60% higher, whatever it is. I mean, those are about the kinds of tax increases Montanans are seeing. I know this Montanan talking on the phone just did. By the way, we haven't gotten our bills yet, right? You can find out your tax.
They're going in the mail this week.
Yeah, well, it's funny how they'll come right after the election, but when they're going to be an eye opener when you see them. You can call in and find out what it is right now if you want to. But like I say, when you get that bill, it's based on the value of your property, and every year that value changes, then your bill goes up by the same amount. The question is whether that increase could somehow could go into a bank that says, Jeff, you owe another $1,400 in property taxes, and we're going to bank that, and then when you sell your house, then that bill will come due. And then that kind of thing. I don't know if that's workable. I don't even know if people are talking about it, but the same idea has occurred to many of us.
Yeah, I just think it's stinky for somebody to be taxed on something you haven't sold, and the value keeps going up. So that's basically what I was hoping there'd be a workaround, like calling it incorporated. Like when you sold some strawberries on your front porch, you call it a corporation, and the value of your, et cetera, et cetera. But there needs to be a fix, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, like I say, the thing about property is that's why it's so attractive as a tax base, because it doesn't sell all the time, right? It's not varying up and down. And now, of course, lately it's been varying in value a lot, so it does seem like kind of a wild bucking horse these days. But historically, it's not done that, and it's been stable. Maybe not the most understandable tax, maybe not the fairest tax, but there's at least been some stability to it, which has been to the benefit of both taxpayers and those getting the money in government for schools and firemen, all that kind of thing.
Hey, Jeff, we're about 2 minutes past a break, so go ahead.
Well, thank you, Dr. Barkey.
Patrick, wrap up your answer to Jeff before we go.
No, I think we're all set. I think we've kind of hashed out what the issues are, and it's a good suggestion. And I'm not sure if it'll work, but it's worth looking at.
Sounds good. When we come back, we have Jerry and Dave both waiting to visit with you. Dr. Patrick Barkey's with us on the phone. We'll be back right after this. We're back on Talkback, and once again, we're thrilled to have with us Dr. Patrick Barkey of the University of Montana's Bureau of Business and Economic Research, and we are continuing now with more calls. Jerry, you're up next. Go ahead, please. You're on with Patrick.
Hey, thank you for giving me this opportunity to get on the radio again. My question has concerns property valuations. Now, your tax data for this year is available on the county website under property information, and you can find the tax values for every property in the county and the state around there if you want to know about it. So my valuation went up 60% this year, and I didn't do a darn thing to my house. My taxes went up 6%. So I'm questioning, have you ever looked at the process that the state uses to come up with property valuations and how realistic they are? Now, I'm an architect, so I've done a lot of estimation of project costs and things like that. So I know there's a lot of book values that you can look at. But I'd like to know from a personal that has a lot of professional interest what you think about property evaluation process.
Yeah, good question. I have looked at it. And I think the key word to be described in this that might be helpful is it's a market value of property. So market value property is an attempt that even though your house is not for sale this year, it's an attempt to estimate what it would get in terms of a sale price if it were for sale. And the reason why I bring that up is because the characteristics of the house, the characteristics of the property, what kind of shape the roof is in, all that sort of stuff is only part of that equation. The other part of the equation is on the demand side. So how other people value what your house is worth in terms of how much they're willing to pay for it. So conceptually, that's one reason why there can be such a disconnect between, maybe the cost of building it again or something like that and its value. I've looked at that in the following sense. Okay, I'm not an appraiser. I'm an economist, but in recent years there have been online realtors like Zillow that have attempted to value property as well, and of course they're aimed more towards that market demand, right? They're realtors fundamentally, and the Zillow valuations, I don't know about individual, this house or that house, they may be way off, but in aggregate, Zillow valuations agree pretty closely with what the Montana assessors are saying, not just here in Missoula County, but also in all 56 counties. I've looked at that, and I don't think the increase in your assessed, again, market value of your property is all that much out of line with what actual sales indicate. So that's the extent to which I've looked at it. I've not opened the hood to see exactly what the appraisers are doing. And frankly, I don't really care because I do care, but I don't really think that's that important because it's the demand side that's really been moving the needle in recent years in terms of making those dollar amounts change.
And with that, we're up against another break. We're going to come right back. Thanks for the call, Jerry. We have Boyd and Dave both waiting to visit with you. When we come back, Dr. Patrick Barkey will be with us for another 8 minutes or so. We still have a couple of phone lines open. If you have a question or comment, the number is 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309. Or, of course, you can use the KGVO app and the Message Us button. We'll be back. We are back. This is Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. 1-800-568-5309. Dr. Patrick Barkey, Director of Research at the University of Montana's Bureau of Business and Economic Research. And I believe Boyd has been waiting the longest. Boyd, good morning. You're on with Patrick Barkey. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, gentlemen. Recently I heard somewhere, and I can't remember where, that the interest payment on this nation's debt is rapidly approaching or very close to our GDP. And I would like some clarification if that is actually the case or not. And the implications of that seem to me almost overwhelming or impossible to return from. So thank you.
Thanks for the call.
Well, it's high. It's not that high. It's the interest payment on the national debt has exceeded the amount that the U.S. government spends on defense, but that's nowhere near GDP. I mean, the total U.S. budget is about 25%. I'm order of magnitude. I might be wrong, but it's somewhere in that area, plus or minus. Somebody else at the screen can verify that. But so the whole budget is 25-ish%, and interest is I don't know what the number is, but it's probably over 10% of the budget. So it's a lot shorter. It's a lot less than GDP, but it has accelerated greatly in the last few years because of new debt and also because of higher interest rates.
Okay, let's get Dave on the line. Dave, good morning, sir. You are on with Dr. Patrick Barkey. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm no fan of illegal immigrants, but back when Obama was president, he sent ISIS to raid a major meatpacking factory in the east. And when the raid was done, they had over 100 illegal immigrants that were working there. They shipped home. And the factory had to shut down because they didn't have enough employees. And there was a meat shortage in the eastern part of the United States because of that. Now, if we multiply that 100,000 times with major movement of illegal immigrants who are working all over this country, I mean, this could have major economic impacts on our country.
Well, then that's exactly why we need a more rational immigration policy. I mean, that's it's always been a thorny political question. This whole notion of immigrants taking jobs away from those who live here legally, and is that right? Is that just? And all that sort of thing. Well, those arguments become less powerful when you have such very low unemployment rates, and also, in particular, for certain kinds of jobs, and you just mentioned that, where a lot of Americans and a lot of folks who are here legally don't find those jobs very attractive. Are really key to a lot of industries, especially in agriculture, in lots of areas like that. So. I don't think that calls for more illegal immigration. I think that calls for a more sensible immigration policy that, unfortunately, has become so politically toxic. I mean, how many more of these important policy issues can we afford to let simply be declared off limits for discussion because people are too emotional about them? I mean, everything from you can't talk about health care, you can't talk about reforming entitlements, you can't talk about immigration. I mean, folks, whether people are emotional about these topics doesn't change the fact that there's important issues in all those areas and many more that need to be addressed.
Well, let me, as an economist, you look at things perhaps a little differently than we do, just as traditional consumer types. So, of course, you're a consumer as well. But as an economist, as you look at what's going on in America right now, what do you see as steps forward that we could help make things a little bit better?
Well, I think the key step is to unlock the power of innovation. I think if we can agree on anything, and I'm not sure we really can anymore, it's that we could do great things with more resources. And yes, this tax is too high. Yes, this regulatory burden is bad. Foreign policy, there's an infinite number of issues. But more resources is going to make more solutions possible. So I think it's really important as an economist that we respect the fact that the private sector and particularly the innovation side of the economy is of key importance. And we shouldn't be burdening sectors with onerous taxes, with regulatory decisions and so forth. I think that's really important. Unfortunately, I think a lot of folks in politics tend to think of the economic pie as being fixed in size, and we're all fighting for a bigger feast. But in fact, it's always been key to the prosperity of this country is to grow our way out of problems. And I think the more limits and the more choking off of investments and risk taking that ultimately power growth.
Now,
I think those are toxic.
We have 2 minutes, and I know you wanted to address a little bit about Montana ag and climate change. You really recently had a chance to talk about that.
Yeah, we're talking about what the impact of climate change has been on the Montana economy, and of course the short answer is I don't know. But I think the thing I wanted to say is that a lot of people are very certain of things, and when it comes to climate policy, they're very certain of what the impact of warming has been on everything, and they're very certain, for example, that in 50 years we'll be in horrible shape, and there's very little humility in making those kind of forecasts. And I think that's the first thing I wanted to say is that while those predictions may be correct, I think it would be wise to understand that there's a high degree of uncertainty about all of those things. The second thing, and I don't have time to talk about two things, Peter, but the second thing is that, you have to understand that the economy and people in general are adaptable creatures. So we can adapt to a lot of things that happen when climate changes. I'm not saying that that the loss of species and changes in precipitation patterns and higher temperatures, that all these are wonderful things. But the fact is that there has been in the past, or likely to be in the future, a high degree of adaptability, including in agriculture, to a different climate, and that especially here in Montana, those could really head off a lot of the negative things that people think are coming down the road with certainty.
Well, Patrick, first of all, thank you for being with us, and I'm glad you survived your encounter this morning, and we deeply appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure as always. Good to talk to all of you.
Take care, sir. Thank you so much. All right. So, Nick, what's coming up on tomorrow's fabulous radio program, sir?
We'll have open phones from 8 to 8:30, and then at 8:30, Dr. John Lott will join us until about 9:45, and then at 9:45, Ryan Zinke will call and encourage everybody to vote for that last 15 minutes or so of the show.
All right. Get out there and make it a great day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 8 for Talk Back.